how we decided on this was like, we are really focused on glioblastoma for a reason. There are many, many different kinds of brain cancers. There are many, many different things, but we feel that because we are the secret sauce, what we do with our brain bank is to say, this is a patient-led movement, patients and carers. And many of us have a huge amount of sympathy for people with all sorts of different kinds of brain tumors and some brain cancers. But we feel we might be more successful in really identifying what we do as a community that's really focused on glioblastoma. And the reason for that is that, by and large, glioblastoma, as we all know, is kind of the worst of the worst. So we think that it makes it much more relevant to our community if we just can all focus on this one disease, which in itself is incredibly complex. But it means that we can help contribute to people who are looking at all different kinds of brain cancer and others, but from this particular perspective. And I think sometimes we can forget that. That's one thing. The other thing is that we don't have time, right? We know that. I don't have time. Most of us don't have time. So really what's driving us is how can we make progress as soon as possible in a way that will have a really, really, really big effect. So we're trying to give voice to the community. We've asked people, like in less than a week, we've got more than 400 people saying, this is what we want. And we launched this survey just going back at the first GBM Awareness Day in July. And we made quite a splash. So what we're trying to do is replicate that, make a big noise, and say, here's a Bill of Rights, 10 points that we can all grapple with. It's not too complicated. It's not too sophisticated. It's saying, this is what the community needs. And if we can do these things, we can make a massive difference. So I'll shut up now, but I just wanted to give it in that context. This is about simple actions making a real difference. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So we have a draft and we want to work with you and all our friends so that we can all come together on this. And we can say, this is what people with glioblastoma want and need. And we've got, we've done all the research. We've asked people what they want. So let's go and do it. Here's a Bill of Rights that all of us can use, that we can try and talk to our doctors. We can try and talk to our advocates. We can try and talk to the scientists and say, here's a way through. I'm going to pause now because I do talk too much, as you know. But what do you all feel about that?
Yeah, Jessica, thanks for that. And I think that we've talked about a lot, and why I love this idea is that the biggest issue from day one is being lost, right? And especially within GBM, when you get the tumor results back and you're Googling this and there's a million different accounts, whether they're as dark as possible or someone as positive as you, to learn from, to have something that's on several, organizations and individuals' radar, where, from a Stat Strong standpoint, we can have something like this on our website as you come to learn about GBM when you unfortunately have to, because it's become a part of your life. You can quickly see all the things and pieces that you both have the right to, but also need to know about. And one of the biggest ones when I was going through the Bill of Rights was the second opinion. And oftentimes I feel like, because things are happening so quickly, you're kind of forced into a decision based on whether it's geography, where you're located, whether it's economic, where you can get to. I mean, times like now, with everything that's going on with COVID-19, I can't even imagine getting that diagnosis right now and also navigating the seas of everything else to keep your loved one kind of safe with their compromised immune system. But I feel like this Bill of Rights will be something that from the onstart makes patients, caregivers, loved ones' life a tad easier in a world that we all know is plenty difficult as it is.
You know, I'm wondering if, I love the fact that it's very succinct. I'm wondering if we need to be a little bit more prescriptive in some ways. I'm thinking about the second opinion. What Colin was just saying about being rushed into a decision, like I have a neighbor who's now got glioblastoma. He was diagnosed at an emergency room visit on a Sunday, and they did the surgery at Methodist Hospital, Jessica, on Monday.
This Monday?
No, the Monday after his Sunday visit to the ER.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
You know, and for those of you who don't know, this is not a hospital. It's not a glioblastoma center, much less a cancer center. I mean, it's not a cancer center, much less a glioblastoma center. So I think people are, you know, the fact that people are rushed into making a decision that may have dramatic repercussions in the future is a really serious issue. So I feel like, yeah, you know, there's the question of how serious their GBM is, and how do they have to have emergency surgery that quick, or I think a lot of people don't have time to get a second opinion because they're being rushed into surgery.
Of course, because they represent money. I mean, that's what happened to me.
Right.
You know.
So I'm just wondering if we need to be a little more specific and give people a few days to process what happened and to make some calls and to reach out. Like the way it is now, they very likely won't have that chance.
I think that's right. And are you saying that when we talk about a second opinion, we also need to explain that actually having a second opinion helps put the brakes on, because it's so unnecessary in the vast majority of cases, and therefore it means you can get a choice. And
I think people need to know about treatment options.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing, I mean, it's funny going through this for so long. I've seen so many different things that made me angry about this and how people are treated by doctors. And one of them is that that doctors prescribe a standard of care that isn't necessarily suited to all patients and can end up shortening their lives.
Yeah.
But because they're not getting a second opinion, and they're stuck at a local center where they're not up on the latest research, they end up getting these, you know, terrible treatment options. Mm-hmm. I mean, before you got on the call, I was saying how my husband wasn't originally on temozolomide because he was told that it wouldn't work for him. I mean, it actually turns out that it ended up helping him, I believe, when he started on it several years later. But many people with his kind of tumor are automatically put on temozolomide and not offered other options when 95% don't respond to it.
Yeah.
And that's considered the standard of care, even though it won't work on people who are unmethylated, which is half the population. So half the population is automatically put on a regime that is not going to work for them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something extremely wrong with that.
Absolutely. The thing I also don't understand enough about is, like, since Harvey Cushing, you know, crowned glioblastoma multiforme as a disease in 1926, right? We've only had 4 treatments approval, and we've also only had 1 device approval. Mm-hmm. And we've had none of these are cures, as we know, right? And I would love to have more of an understanding with scientists and us about how the system for drug the drug regulation system is not fit for purpose. You know, some of you will know, and Margaret, I don't know if you've looked into CGAT. We know that we're in the era of individualized medicine. We know that glioblastoma is one of the most heterogeneous conditions there is. Everybody's cancer in glioblastoma is radically different to the others. And the only way to get around that is to get around this idea of a one-size-fits-all approach. So even here, I'm on this clinical trial with glioblastoma. Anybody on this clinical trial will receive the same treatment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. And now, because it all takes so long, it's between 8 and 10 years on average to get a clinical trial from inception through to successful conclusion. We don't have that time. So that's out the run. But what it means is that I am now on this taking out a bloody mortgage to work with a company called CGAT in Germany. And a number of people are doing this where their tumor tissue post-recurrence, when it's really complex, what CGAT does is it creates an individualized vaccine for the individual with that tumor tissue. And so the vaccine is completely individualized. And we know that many researchers want to do this, but they can't get ahead of the regulations. They can't get ahead of the research to find out. And the research isn't structured for a kind of more one-size-fits-all approach. Has anybody else heard of this approach?
I mean, I've heard of DC Vax.
Yeah, it's a similar. It's newer to DC Vax, and it isn't through the regulatory hurdles yet. But it's similar in the sense everybody's trying to get closer to the individualized, personalized approach, right? I wonder whether we're straying from the Bill of Rights, but the Bill of Rights should be the best possible treatment for people, right? And that includes sharing all the different treatments that are emerging out there and how we can all share that knowledge with each other to accelerate progress and understanding.
Jessica, one way, I don't trust any doctor in the hinterlands to share all the information that's available about treatments, the most up-to-date information. And maybe one objective could be an updated summary, a summary that's updated every 6 months or so of treatments and who they're suited to. And the patient Bill of Rights would include giving the patient that outline.
That's a good idea. But also, you mean like as a Bill of Rights
they're entitled to understand.
As part of our ethos of rights, we believe in giving people with the disease the absolute updated, being as open and sharing of the information to kind of go alongside the rights.
Right, that's the precept. The
Yeah,
Bill of Rights is a set of precepts, but I'm saying that should be backed up by a document that the expectation is that the doctor will give that document that has a summary. I mean, I got nothing when my husband was diagnosed. I had no idea. I was just left completely on my own to research treatments and evaluate them against each other. And I have no medical background.
Yep.
And I don't think patients should have to go through that, in a moment of disaster.
Agreed.
I hear that over and over and over again. I hear all these stories, and it's really mind blowing in a way, because I think people hear brain cancer, you must have immediate surgery, and then they just don't even think to ask anything else. But I want to bring it. This is a really good points here. So I'm adding some things to our Bill of Rights. So we already had patient power, which includes tumor analysis, personalized treatment. And I think, Margaret, what you just said is very powerful. I'm going to add the standard of care doesn't work for all, obviously, but can we say half? I mean,
50%.
50%?
50% of patients have unmethylated tumors. And according to the research, 95% of them are not going to respond to the standard of care, which means that for close to 50% of the patients, this is worthless and will perhaps shorten their lives and at least shorten the quality, abbreviate the quality of their lives.
Yeah.
But it's very easy, right? And doctors do not want to deviate from that.
Right, because it's the standard of care. Yeah, that's
right. It's the standard of care.
Yeah.
I mean, there are now there are upwards of 50 studies that establish that the standard of care is ineffective for unmethylated patients. Why are they still doing this? Even after they understand that the patient is unmethylated.
Yeah.
It's outrageous.
It is.
And then I've seen unmethylated patients, speaking the Bill of Rights, right? I've seen unmethylated patients complaining on Inspire and saying, wait, I told my doctor, I said, wait, I understand this doesn't work. And they refuse to back down from it.
That's when you need a different doctor. That's horrible.
Well, that's what everybody says. They'll say you need a different doctor. but the fact is, some people are not, a lot of people are not on Inspire. They haven't found it and they don't even know any better.
Oh, yeah. But wait, can I get back a little bit about the immediate surgery? I think we could would that fit into second opinion, or would that fit into clarity? I'm not quite sure. What do you all think? Because if you're told to get immediate surgery, your first thought is not to get a second opinion. But are we saying that it should be that at that moment, like in the ER?
Boy, it's really tough because if you're in a shitty hospital, your chances of survival are significantly reduced if you have surgery at that hospital for glioblastoma.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the only difficulty there ultimately is kind of the intangibles where someone, in an area where they don't even have anything close to them or the ability to, surgery is still the best option in terms of removing it. Obviously, it's not the top medical hospital in the Northeast, but I wouldn't overgeneralize it by saying a second opinion right off the bat. I mean, if surgery, if you have in a good spot where you can go at it, I mean, surgery is proven better than any treatment.
So maybe it's the second opinion after the surgery.
I don't.
Because we're talking about the treatment after surgery. I mean, everybody needs surgery, right? But what happens afterwards may be variable.
I think the problem is at the moment, it's very hard to generalize about this, but I think that where we've got to is thinking everybody should have the right to a second opinion. And the reason for that is at the moment, what encourages the doctors and the system is to get people in as soon as possible. That is not necessarily in the interest of the patients. I was in a country hospital in the Catskills, and they said, I had a seizure. They said, come in and do this now. I therefore I was in a state of shock. I didn't know. And if somebody had been able to say, okay, you might want to shop around, I might have had a much better surgery. I had no way of knowing which doctor should be treating me. This was all new. In the vast majority of cases, my understanding, and we should talk to our doctors more about this, is you don't need immediate surgery. You should be able to take your time. Now, it could be that you could have a second opinion that could combine a remote consultation. It doesn't mean that has to be the doctor that's looking after you. But if you look at organizations like Cancer Commons, where you can have a tumor board, a virtual tumor board, who can look and see what situation you're in, it will drive up, our hope is that will drive up quality control. So I think a second opinion is a really powerful potential way to really drive home competition, better treatment.
So I think the virtual tumor board, that's something that we hadn't had before, but I think it's good. We could put that under specialist care, right? Or should that be under second opinion, right? Or second opinion, I guess.
Second opinion.
I mean, what principle is you shouldn't just be given, I mean, for me, the principle is not you've got no choice. The principle should be you should have a choice, including a second opinion, because that's at the critical point. If you get a good second opinion, it can make all the difference between good surgery. I mean, that's the moment. And if not, you can die. You have a bad surgeon, that's it. So to me, that's the absolute critical early intervention. Get a second opinion so you can get to grips with what you're doing. Like I did. That's how I was at NYU and then I went to Columbia. If not, I would never have been able to have those treatments. And I think at the moment, because of the way the United States health system is, as in many other countries, is that it's about money.
Yeah.
It's to be about the patients. We shouldn't be denied a second opinion. That should be part. It should be made easy. It should be a form of, it should be automatically available.
That should be in the standard of care. That should be
not.
The standard of care. Yeah. I'm always shocked when we get our medical advisors in a room and they start talking and they all start sounding like Bernie Sanders socialists and communists, which is really refreshing and nice. But then I guess they leave and they go back to their hospitals and that's just
the hands are tied. And I think also, I think it's also that they're so used to the way, the do no harm ethos for medicine, and they are so cautious about suggesting stuff that is not authorized or not the standard of care, right? Which is why like doctors like, Fabio and like Stash Strong have had, where doctors are a little bit more open to new approaches, but they're really prescribed in medical ethics. It's tough.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about the second opinion issue, and I mean, Jessica knows I'm like an information fiend. So I'm probably, if I err, I'm going to be erring on giving people too much. So just take that in mind when I tell you what I'm going to say. But, so I was saying how describing the different kinds of, they should have a document describing the different kinds of treatment, but also people never have no idea how to find a cancer center that specializes in GBM. Now we know when the standard of care gets devised, there are these, 30 cancer centers, which are the ones that define the standard of care. But, I didn't learn that until I was 2 years into this. Like people should have a list of the cancer centers that have that status.
That's a really
being
good point.
GBM centers, because getting a second opinion from Joe Schmo Hospital is not going to help you.
That's a really good point, actually. That's something we could put up on the website straight away, actually.
Yeah.
Jessica, like you've seen it a million times. People have posted on Inspire saying, what are the good cancer centers? How many times have I seen that?
I don't know.
People keep asking and they keep getting the same answers, but it should be in one location, right? And when you are diagnosed, you should be handed that. Like, here are the major cancer centers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But obviously some people do get that information from their doctors, or is nobody getting that? I mean,
nobody gets it.
Nobody gets that. So they have to go around on the Inspire boards or Facebook.
Exactly. If they can find Inspire.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Iwamoto, when I remember when I first told him about Inspire, he had no idea what I was talking about.
I know.
Yeah, It's a whole world of information and resources exchange that's now happening, you know, just because of the internet. I mean, before it, I don't know what, I don't think anyone had any options. So that, but I don't think doctors are aware of this. They don't know how much information is being exchanged.
I think that's right, but I think that the standard of care is predicated on an idea of a standard of care for doctors. That is different, right? It's a standard of care that's only one aspect of what we need. You know, we want a Bill of Rights, and we want a Bill of Rights for people living with glioblastoma and their families. And that's a slightly different thing. We want to say, look, in the standard of care, if you want to really take care of scientists and you're very worried about, you're not, you know, you're worried about causing harm to patients, but patients want to have, you know, they want to be able to have the right to try. You know, we're looking at this from a slightly different angle. And what we want is a Bill of Rights to say that anybody with glioblastoma should be treated in this way. In a way, I mean, I think it could really help. It could have a big impact, because we are saying, actually, if you look at it from the perspective of people living with disease and those close to them, you get all the kinds of insights that you don't get in the lab. I mean, Margaret, just like you, you and I, and, you know, we started at a similar place, similar time, and I was given we were given no information.
None. And we were, I mean, here we were going to the best doctors in the world, and we got no information. I mean, we were told before my husband went into surgery that it was brain cancer, but don't do any research. You know, don't scare yourself or whatever. I didn't do anything until until the test came in, and I was told it was glioblastoma, and I had no idea what that was.
I think what you just said is so important too, because one of the things I've learned of meeting hundreds of families over the past 2+ years is a lot of them don't have advocates like yourself or like Jess for herself and her family, where they're doing the research, they're taking the time, they're basically engulfing themselves in this disease to learn more, to ultimately help their loved ones. And that's, I think that's the true purpose and mission of this Bill of Rights, is all of those people who might only not have the ability or location to get to one of those top spots. But even if you're at one of those top spots, the lack of information is absolutely daunting. And the part that I've learned that I never thought of, because it wasn't how we went through it, is that so many people kind of fight it alone. And I think that's another aspect of poor statistics, because if you don't have information and you don't have anyone to find it, and you're fighting this terrible disease, how are you expected to find the right avenues, or how are you expected to pass a 10 to 15 month life expectancy? So in drafting this, I think that can be a huge difference, where there's no reason that this Bill of Rights we can't partner with several. I mean, I have connections with several institutions at this point. Jessica obviously does, OurBrainBank. There's no reason why this can't be something that we're also educating the professionals on, to learn this quote unquote Bill of Rights, to from day one, these are the things you need to relay to your prospective patient upon tumor, realization or diagnosis.
Yeah, completely.
I just want to build on something Colin said, which I think we should put in there in some way. It's a patient's Bill of Rights, but maybe in the introduction, because most of it is physician focused, kind of. So this is the patient focus, is patients need to understand that their doctors are not gods. And they are not all knowing. And I think this is, the Marcus Welby syndrome, for those of us who are, in our 50s and 60s and remember Marcus Welby. I have a friend whose aunt just died. She died of pancreatic cancer. And Optune was in clinical trials and has been effective for those patients in the trials with pancreatic cancer at extending their lives. So I told my friend about it. She told her aunt. Her aunt talked to her doctor. And her doctor said, "Oh, you don't want to carry that thing around. What a pain. And, you know, it doesn't work anyway." And, you know, she's dead now. And when my friend talked to her, she said, "Well, the doctor told me it wasn't going to work." And, you know, she trusted the doctor. And I think that most people trust the doctor. Why wouldn't, you know, the doctor is trained, right? But the doctor, you know, there's so much research out there. It's so much to digest that I find that doctors are not necessarily up on everything, I meant. And, you know, it puts this terrible responsibility on patient advocates to fill in the gaps. But the fundamental thing that people need to understand is that doctors are not all knowing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No one is.
Yep.
I feel like so much of what we hear from patients is, well, I'm not a medical expert, but, and then they go on this, you know, they know so much. And I think the wealth of information that is within our community is so powerful. And even if one, I mean, obviously we can't be prescriptive about what, you know, what route to follow, but to somehow, as part of this or a link or something, to kind of just gather all those resources and put them in one place. And even if it is, you know, Jessica Morris is not a doctor, she is a patient, these are her experiences, this is what you've used, and just have that. And I mean, it's just, I just sort of feel like we, you know, absolutely this whole thing about doctors are not all knowing, but there's just such a wealth of resources that we actually have access to. And it feels like it's, at the moment, it still feels quite sort of bitty. And like you can go and, you know, see what somebody posted a few days ago or whatever to find that. But maybe that's something that we could think about, a way to compile that and make that accessible to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it hadn't been for Inspire, my husband would be dead. No, I'm really serious, because one aspect of his treatment, when he had a recurrence, I went on Inspire, and there's this wonderful woman, Janet, who, you know, I sent her the results of his genomic testing, and she suggested a treatment that the doctor then adopted.
Yeah.
She also suggested.
Yeah, go on.
Anyway.
No, I think that's right. I think it's really about, you know, crowdsourcing opinions, crowdsourcing expertise, and how can we help that improve? I think Team Inspire is great, really great. But I think there is, we should look and see whether there's a way with this Bill of Rights, which could be a really central force for all of us in glioblastoma, right? If we could use that as a rallying call, I think it could really help define the basic principles of what we decide is good care. And then around that, it can be a growing force. You know, it's such a powerful mechanism. I mean, it works enough for the Bill of Rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jessica, I think, you know what, because you're always saying you have a license to be ambitious. You know, let's be ambitious. Let's say we want to change the standard of care. I mean, that seems crazy ambitious, but why not? And actually, Margaret, I would love to, and also you, Colin, once we get this established, we're going to ask members of our community to make little short videos about each particular point, because I know we can find 100 people with stories, relevant stories. But, you know, that's really powerful. Margaret, what you just said about, if it wasn't for Inspire, my husband would be dead. You know, and that, I think we would put that under clarity of information. Because you shouldn't have to go do your own research. You know, that's just crazy.
Yes.
Agreed. And sorry to interrupt, but I actually have a work call that I have to jump on 11. But
okay.
It was great. It's great to hear from everyone. And as this keeps moving forward, obviously keep me in the mix, and we'd love to obviously have us on our website as we work with you guys as advocacy partners moving forward.
Right.
Cheers.
Anyway, it was good to hear from you again, Colin.
Cheers. I also have to go in a minute, actually, strangely enough. As if I haven't got enough to do, but I've got to go and talk to all these bloody doctors again. So what's the oh, Stacey?
Yeah, I was just thinking, perhaps you could present this Bill of Rights along with a rally call, a letter to the editor type thing into a prominent medical journal, calling for a change to the standard of care. And in the meantime, this is what you should be considering and advocating for on behalf of patients. And on the website have, the succinct list, but then also a resources page, which maybe lists, the top cancer centers, the top doctors, maybe get a network together of top doctors who are willing to be that second opinion and have a list. And I mean, it gets them business as well. So they should want to be on that list, and have that readily available for people to be able to do consults remotely, within 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
That's
Love
a great idea,
Love
Stacey.
it.
If we got all our medical advisors to sign a letter or do an op-ed or sign a letter to the New York Times saying we are the top GBM doctors and we call for a change in the standard of care, I think that would be really powerful. Maybe one of those.
I don't see that happening. I'm sorry.
It's not gonna happen.
There's too much emotional. I can't think of what the term is, but deference to each other. I mean, let me just give you one example. So one of the differences in my husband's treatment was that he ultimately did go on temozolomide, but when his tumor was inoperable as a kind of a Hail Mary. But Dr. Iwamoto prescribed the standard of care, the one that didn't work. And Jana had suggested research in Europe showed that if you take temozolomide daily and you have an unmethylated tumor, you have better results. So instead of the usual regime, he took a small dose every day. And I think that's one of the reasons he's still here. But Dr. Iwamoto hasn't suggested that to any other unmethylated patient. He's still doing standard of care. And Dr. Iwamoto is about as enlightened as you could possibly get.
So why is that?
I don't know. I mean, you would think that he would use Glenn as an example, right? Glenn is still alive after 4 years. He's a real outlier.
He will say to you, I mean, I can hear many of the questions that have come back to me from Fabio and others, which is, on individual cases. And sometimes they'll say, it's not a black and white thing, being unmethylated or methylated. And in the absence of many other treatments, is not very good. But I just
no. But I'm not saying not to take it. But if you have a better chance with daily temozolomide, why not try that?
Yeah. No, I hear you.
But they're not doing that in this country.
It's crazy. But I just want to catch what Stacey was saying again. Sorry, I'm really suffering from, flitting all over the place. What was the point that you were saying, Stacey?
A letter to the editor, right? Stacey?
Stacey, are you still there?
Sorry, I was lost and now I'm found. Yeah, a letter to the editor, call to action to one of the top medical journals or a top publication, maybe in July on Glioblastoma Day.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. But what our medical advisors sign it?
Well, it's about the people power. I mean, they're all advisors to us. Why would they not? I mean, I think it would help them. I mean, that's why we've constructed, as most nonprofits do.
Or you can have patients sign it.
We can have, yes, exactly. But we could, I'm sure they would sign it because they're our advisors. It doesn't mean they're board members. But I don't think we should worry about that. I think we can say it. But what we should think about, I think, is a really good idea to ponder how we can make a splash on GBM Day in a way that could really signal this is a new approach. And it really speaks to what we're saying. It's not about just the medicine. It's not just about the science. It's about the people who are not getting the treatments and the service that we need. And we're taking action, finding the way ourselves. I mean, the treatment I'm on is a clinical trial, which I wouldn't have found otherwise. And that's not just because some doctors are unhelpful. It's also because the whole system does not work for patients. That's why each MRI machine in the States will have different ways of calculating stuff. I could go on and on. I guess what I'm trying to say, and I'm not saying it very well, is I think we should.
Great. Seriously, Jessica.
Thank you. I think we should use a framework like the Bill of Rights. Let's get that right. And then we can have a very concise, that everybody can focus around while contributing their own experiences.
Okay.
I think that would be really helpful. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, we make a splash on this, but it becomes a live thing. So there's the Bill of Rights. Everybody can tweet and can use Team Inspire and all the other platforms. Share what we're all learning.
Yeah, I think that's great, Jessica. And I think we really have an opportunity to get the word out there. The problem is communicating to those people in the hospital, like your friend Margaret, diagnosed on a Sunday, surgery on a Monday. How do we reach those people? I mean, is it the ER doctors? I mean, that's I think the hardest challenge to do. But I think we did a lot of great discussion here today, and we recorded it, so I'll edit it a little bit and then put it on our YouTube channel, and we can share it. And actually, Margaret, it'd be great if you could, when you're on the Inspire those boards, do you ever mention OurBrainBank and send people to us? That would be great if you could do that.
I mean, I could, I'll make some comments on it and send it around, I guess. I mean, if I have any thoughts, I don't have anything offhand.
Yeah.
But
once we have the published version, it would be great if you could share it there.
Yeah, sure.
But we might not call this OurBrainBank. This might just be a Bill of Rights. It's supported by us and it's supported by others, like Stash Strong.
There's no reason why some of the things that we're talking about are kind of universal to all cancer patients. I mean, I think we need to tailor it so it's specifically unique, but there are a lot of clauses that would really apply to anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be the kind of thing that really takes off.
Yeah.
Is there a patient Bill of Rights in general at all?
I think
is this a first?
No, people have tried it, and different groups have different ones. I know the ABTA is working on, and the IBTA. Mm-hmm. So it's been done before. People have done it, but I don't think it's widely disseminated. Obviously,
there are quite a lot of cancer patient rights, and often, and like the IBTA, the International Brain Team, they've got a draft one. And we've been talking to them about that, but I think theirs is going to be longer. Or they're talking about a charter. But what we thought would be really helpful is we need to have something that captures the imagination, that's short, that's concise, which is why the Bill of Rights itself was so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's learn from that. And what we're doing with this Bill of Rights, it can become a template for other cancers and other horrible diseases. But let's start with who matters most to us, because that way people will be really driven to really encourage people to take up this call.
Absolutely.
All the points we've made about glioblastoma, everything worse, and if you can crack this, then you can do everything else. And,
mm-hmm.
I think could be very powerful. I think there's some work we need to do as a group to really wordsmith and get this to a way that people could really like. And we've got some of it, but if you can help us really shape this into something that's really powerful, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Well, I think this has been amazing, and I think we should maybe stop. We've been going for more than an hour. But as I said, I recorded it, so I'll post it. Thank you, Margaret. This was amazing. You have such amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, you know, Jessica, Martha, Stacy, you know, thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. I have to go because I have to go do a Zoom call with my kids.
Very nice.
Okay. All right.
On your wall.
Take care. And Jessica, I wish you the best of luck on Monday.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. My heart's with you.
Cheers, Stacey.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Chat later. Bye.
Bye.